For many years, collecting 32X had been a painless and inexpensive endeavor. Hardware could be purchased for as little as $2, incomplete of course, with games costing even less. For example, I purchased these gems 5 years back, 2 of which were factory sealed, spending less than $2 each. I didn't find them in the wild, no, I bought them on Amazon. It blew my mind then, seeing as how most resellers online will try and bleed collectors for as much as possible. Within the last few years, prices have started to rise. These titles now fetch $15 to $40. Again, sealed. If you opt for the cartridge, then it's a different story. Times have definitely changed. Ultimately, games only cost as much as collectors are willing to spend, and they've proven they are willing to spend quite a bit. There are 3 titles in particular that have managed to command top dollar in spite of cheaper alternatives, like the EverDrive for instance. First up, T-Mek.
Excellent.
This one isn't as costly for North American audiences, yet the PAL release is said to be extremely rare and obnoxiously priced. In the States, it may set you back $20 to $50, depending on the condition. In the UK, you can expect to spend a little over $1,000 in English currency. I shit you not. So T-Mek is a straightforward vehicular combat game where you bomb around in one of 6 hovercraft, tearing through 12 levels of pure mayhem, all so that you can face off against a ruthless dictator and conquer an empire. It's like Twisted Metal meets Battlezone. Once you've typed in your name, you'll pick a craft. You can switch vehicles between every match, which is nice, though there's not much in the way of variety. The craft above look virtually identical to those found below. The only difference is that one is fast and weak, while the other is slow and powerful. Even their primary attacks are similar. Kinda lame, but whatever. As for the gameplay, your goal is to earn as many points as possible before time runs out. How do you earn points? You gotta kill your opponents. Multiple times. They don't blink out of existence upon destruction like any other game. Instead, they'll respawn and seek revenge. Revenge killing earns more points. Thankfully, this applies to you as well, so it's totally fair. Whenever you smoke one of these bitches, they leave health in their wreckage. For whatever reason, I always imagine it's a barrel of kryptonite or dilithium crystals. Yes, I'm a dork. Your primary weapon depends on the craft. We have plasma bolts, mines, and self-guided missiles. When you've exhausted your payload, chase after one of these drones and voila, you're good to go. The missiles are fucking awesome. Difficult to maneuver, but they make for some wicked kill shots. Secondary weapons laser cannons, and they never overheat. You never fight more than 3 opponents at a time. The boss matches are no different, and that brings us to my first legitimate complaint. The bosses are boring as shit. No giant tank or death chopper of some kind, no. It's just more of the same with a different hue. I'm sorry, but that's lazy as fuck. They couldn't spend 20 goddamn seconds dreaming up something else. I'd sooner fight a unicorn shitting rainbows while breathing fire. May not make much sense, at least it would be interesting. Aside from the lack of imagination, it can be a fun game. Blowing things to Kingdom Come is thoroughly enjoyable. The arenas are somewhat barren, but they do add to the experience via obstacles like these pillars of green jelly you gotta blast your way through. The graphics are decent for the time, though they do pale in comparison to its arcade counterpart. The HUD consumes more real estate, and the frame rate is wildly inconsistent. Still, it's not terrible. Multi-sided enemy sprites, scaling effects, dithering, it all looks good. I'm betting it would have looked better on Saturn. Much to my surprise, the sound actually surpasses the visuals here. Like, I am righteously impressed. Explosions and laser blasts resonate, but the digitized speech is some of the best I've heard on a cartridge.
Excellent. You have defeated Baked.
My one gripe here is that there's no music. Like, seriously, aside from the menus and such, there's no music during gameplay. I know developers wanted to bombard players with quadraphonic chaos, and I can accept that in arcades. Almost every arcade I've ever been has music playing throughout, so it's no great loss. But in the home? Yeah, my ears get mighty lonesome. I mean, really, which would you prefer? No music? With music? No contest. Control is solid no matter which controller you use. While I typically favor the arcade pad, I feel the classic works just as well. But as you can see, T-Mek is a fairly decent port of an average arcade game. Not great, but good. Now, is it worth 1,000 fucking quid? I'm sure you already know my answer, but to be completely honest, I've yet to play a game I'd blow more than $200 on. That was back when I had way more money to burn. Unless you're a hardcore collector or you have a disposable income, lucky fuck, I'd say save your cash and buy one of them new EverDrives y'all kids keep tweeting about. I don't know why I went all pop-up on you, but fuck it, I'm tired. Okay, we've got Spider-Man Web of Fire from Blue Sky Software, the very same developer responsible for Jurassic Park and Vector Man, both on Genesis. It was the last game released for 32X in North America after Sega had publicly abandoned the unit. Because of this, very few copies were made available and received little press upon release. I remember a time when nobody, I mean nobody, wanted this thing, but no longer. Recently, a factory-sealed copy sold for almost $800 on eBay. Good lord, the cartridge alone typically sells for $200. I'm not even kidding, it's complete madness. A madness I will never ever indulge in. I had to settle for an EverDrive for this review. I'm fairly certain this is how most players will ever experience this game. Not because it's hard to find, but it's too fucking expensive. Just so you know, I'm not a big Spider-Man fan. I don't hate it, okay? It's just not my thing. I review Web of Fire with zero bias. So, how's the game? Yeah, it's average, like painfully so. Before we get into that, here's the plot. Hydra's holding New York City hostage by trapping its citizens within some sort of energy shield, so Spidey Pants needs to take out a few generators and beat ass. That shield reminds me of that crappy artificial ozone layer from Highlander 2: The Quickening. That's not a good thing. Obviously, it's a typical side-scrolling action game. You punch, kick, and web-sling your way through 6 stages like New York, a power plant, George Washington Bridge, an oil refinery, and so on. Of course, they're all littered with a veritable fuck-ton of generic-looking enemies for you to best. They may have appeared in the comics, though I'm not entirely sure, nor do I care. None of them stand out for me. Fisticuffs are serviceable at best. It grows tiresome before you pass the first stage. Sling them, tap the B button a few times, then proceed. Probe droids can provide more challenge, for they double as obstacles in many instances, and these odd fish things can be mildly irritating. Otherwise, enemies are laughable. Even the bosses suck, the few I encountered at least. Dragon Man's the first boss you'll face, and you take him down like any other Hydra agent. Lame. Regardless, you do get some help. In the first stage, you'll find Daredevil. Free him, collect some Daredevil tokens, then you can call upon the Man Without Fear during the game. How do you call him though? Well, A is web, B is attack, and C is jump. You'd think it would be something simple like pressing A and B together, but no, you gotta pause the game and select Daredevil. I've never seen this done in any other game. Why is this even necessary? Worse yet, the game is one player, so you can forget about a Spider-Man Daredevil team-up. Blah. The levels are okay as far as the layout's concerned. Some provide alternate routes. You can either hop over these flame barriers or take to the sky. Either choice will present a challenge, but the option is welcome. It gives players some much needed variety. However, the lack of checkpoints is most vexing. Many times I've been within arm's reach of the goal only to cock things up last minute and start all over. It's bollocks. Jesus, I really need to lay off the BBC. Overall, the gameplay is dull. By the time I made it to the Washington Bridge, I just wanted to burn through this mess and be done with it. That's bad. Another sore spot is the graphics. The character animations are decent, though they don't gel with the backgrounds. It looks like a shitty cut and paste job in Microsoft Paint. I don't mean to be an ass, but it just looks rough. Compare it to Vector Man or even Jurassic Park. They look way more impressive, and they're fucking Genesis games. I especially hate the perspective with these buildings. The Adventures of Batman and Robin tackled this problem with greater technical flourish, and again, that's Genesis. It's not like 32X couldn't provide stunning 2D visuals. Don't believe me? Look at Knuckles Chaotix or Tempo. Fucking gorgeous! Web of Fire came later, yet it looks worse. I don't get it. Even the sound is half-assed. Sound effects are recycled from Jurassic Park. Yeah, that's the same scream. That and the music's kind of bland. The main title track is cool, but the New York stage sounds like some Genesis soundtrack as played through an AtGames retro console. I'm serious, it's a real letdown. Alright, tell me, would you blow $900 on this? Would you even spend $200 for a cartridge? Oh, I'm betting I can answer for you. Allow me. Fuck no! I've been pretty harsh, yes, but I will say this. Web of Fire is playable. That's more than I can say for City of Angels, of all the fucking games. Long and short, don't take out a second mortgage to buy this shit. If you happen to find it in a garage sale for $10, go for it. That or sell it on eBay for an ungodly amount of money and buy a couple of great Saturn games instead. Believe it or not, Darxide was meant to be a launch title for the ill-fated Neptune, a standalone 32X console that would have done away with the awkward installation of the add-on and the need for a second AC adapter. In spite of this, Darxide received a limited release in Europe. Aside from FIFA Soccer 96, this is the only other 32X game exclusive to the region. While some speculate that fewer than 1,000 copies were produced, I've yet to find anything in print or online that would support such a claim. I've read a few articles stating this is the holy grail of 32X collecting, though recent online sales don't reflect that. Not to say Darxide is cheap, because it's not, no way. For such a rare game, you'd imagine having to pay a king's ransom just for the instructions. Much to my surprise, it's on par with Web of Fire, a complete copy sold recently for as little as $500. Anyway, many critics have touched on Darxide already, though it's typically emulation. I opted for a reproduction, and for good reason. First, let's discuss the gameplay. As you can see, it's a 3D space shooter where you are a lone starfighter having to defend the Earth from alien invaders. Yeah, I've never heard that tale before. Like, ever. Its arcade-like simplicity proved to be a bone of contention for players and critics, often dismissing it as a kind of 3D asteroids. I'd accept that if all 10, yes, 10 levels centered around destroying more and more asteroids, with the occasional flying saucer thrown in for good measure. Instead, the game ups the ante with every mission. The first level has you destroying asteroids and saucers. That's it. Sounds simple, though many players find it damn near impossible. Why is that? In my opinion, it's the HUD. Take a moment and focus on the information provided here. I'm sure much of it is obvious, like the latitude and longitude, the radar, energy and shield indicators, your score, standard stuff, right? Well, would you have guessed that the game is timed? Fucking A, there's a time limit, but where's the counter? This is your time limit. No lie. Thanks to this fantastic article written by Knuckles87 of SegaBits.com, I knew this long before I picked up a controller. The mission ends once your ship reaches the moon. The number next to your ship indicates how many lives you have, while this represents the mission you're on. It makes sense, but I would not have known this had I not read the article first. Not right away, at least. Destroying asteroids and saucers is a constant throughout, though your third objective will differ from mission to mission. Also, the number of asteroids diminishes as you progress. Thank fucking Lord, because destroying these space rocks can be frustrating early on, since they'll first break up into 2 big pieces, then 4 tiny pieces. Of course, it's fucking space, so they scatter and you have to chase after them, which is made worse by the shallow draw distance. Like I said, they're slowly phased out, and you'll earn weapon upgrades along the way. Later missions have you taking out alien bombers, protecting shuttles, and rescuing miners. God, rescuing miners can be infuriating at times since they rest on the asteroids, so you gotta shoot that big rock, followed by smaller rocks, then scoop up the miners before they explode. Darxide makes you multitask like a motherfucker, and it has induced some serious fits of pre-adolescent rage. I wanted to chuck this fucker in the rubbish several times, but on the flip side, I appreciated the challenge, and there's no denying the satisfaction felt whenever I took down a saucer or saved a miner. When I see that mission successful screen appear, I feel like a goddamn champion. I fucking earned my victory. To me, that's the mark of a good game. One gripe most players share are the controls, though I disagree. Inverted controls aren't an issue here, seeing as how you can switch between inverted and normal in the options. Some say they're slippery or too sensitive. Admittedly, they differ from Star Wars Arcade and Shadow Squadron, where you have to hold down the throttle in order to maintain speed in both games. Here, I'd equate this to setting the volume on your television. This game makes full use of the 6-button arcade pad, so I wouldn't even attempt the 3-button. In fact, I didn't, so I'm sorry. Still, controls are responsive with zero lag. Just take some time to acquaint yourself and you'll be golden. Now the graphics. I think it's safe to say that Darxide has the best 3D presentation on 32X, outshining Metalhead, the only other 32X game to make use of texture map polygon renderings. It's quite a sight, really. There are a lot of effects on display. 3D fighters and objects, sprite scaling and rotation in conjunction with pre-rendered animation, light sourcing, and a decent frame rate. Like T-Mek, it can be erratic when there's too much going on, but it doesn't distract from the game. These cutscenes, though, damn, it's just chugging away there. Wow. If you should run this on an emulator, the frame rate runs consistently smooth. That's why I went reproduction over emulation. I mean, this is how the game looks and plays while running on real hardware, blemishes and all. This was an achievement, and it should be experienced as intended, on a 32X. The audio isn't as remarkable as the visuals, though it's pretty damn good. Sound effects are loud and clear, and the music's classic Genesis. Yeah, bathe in that synthesized wave of sonic awesome. I may be in the minority, but I've been digging on this game for almost a year now with no end in sight. The gameplay is very been there, done that, and the learning curve's a little steep. Regardless, Darxide has plenty of action and challenge to hold my interest. Enough to spend $500? No fucking way. $50? Yeah, totally.
Thank you.